We live in a world overflowing with noise. Everyone's talking, few are listening. Everyone's arguing, few are understanding. And yet in every generation, there comes a quiet truth that refuses to fade. If you can understand people, you can move the world, gently, not through force, but through empathy. That's what Dale Carnegie tried to teach nearly a century ago. His book wasn't about manipulation or control. It was about grace, respect, and emotional awareness, the art of influencing hearts before minds. But let's be honest, the word influence today feels corrupted. We associate it with social media, persuasion, or branding. But influence in its purest form is something entirely different. It's the ability to make others feel safe enough to listen. Because at the core of human behavior is something simple, yet profound. People don't crave logic. They crave importance. They don't want to be told what's right. They want to be understood. They don't need more arguments. They need to feel seen. The tragedy is that most of us never learned how to make people feel seen. We were taught how to talk, not how to listen. We were trained to impress, not to connect. From childhood, we're rewarded for speaking up, not for slowing down. And as adults, we chase validation, not understanding. We enter conversations like battles to win, not bridges to cross. But every once in a while, you meet someone different, someone calm, steady, and effortlessly kind. They speak less, yet people lean closer. They don't raise their voice, yet others soften theirs. What's their secret? It's not charm, not charisma. It's a deep, quiet mastery of human nature. They understand that everyone carries a fragile sense of self, constantly searching for respect. And when you can give that, sincerely, you can move mountains without lifting a finger. Carnegie once wrote, "You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get them interested in you." It's one of those truths that sounds simple, yet almost no one lives by, because it requires the one skill modern life has buried: genuine curiosity. To be curious about someone else, you have to step outside your own ego. You have to stop performing. You have to stop thinking about your next sentence. When was the last time you truly listened? Not waiting for your turn to speak, but really listening. When was the last time you asked someone how they were and meant it, without checking your phone midway through their answer? We've forgotten how to give attention as a gift. We treat it as currency, trading it only when we get something in return. But attention is not a transaction. It's an act of love. When you look someone in the eye and truly hear them, you're saying, "I see you. You matter. You're not invisible." That's influence. That's power. The kind that doesn't need to shout.
Now, here's where most people get it wrong. They think influence is about getting your way. But the truth is, the best way to influence people is to stop trying to win. You cannot argue someone into agreement. You can only listen them into understanding. Carnegie understood this. He said the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it, because arguments don't create change. They create walls. No one ever said, "Thank you for humiliating me. Now I see your point." The human ego is a fortress. When attacked, it doesn't surrender. It reloads, and every harsh word you throw bounces off like arrows against stone. But when you lower your weapon, when you seek to understand, not destroy, that fortress opens a gate. Understanding disarms people. It doesn't mean you agree, it means you respect. And that small act of emotional intelligence can shift an entire relationship. Here's a truth most people miss. You can be right and still be wrong if you make others feel small while proving your point. Because people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. It's easy to win a debate. It's harder to win a person. And in life, winning people will always matter more. That's why Carnegie believed humility was stronger than pride. He taught that when you admit your mistakes, when you say, "I was wrong," quickly and sincerely, you don't lose power, you gain trust. Humility is magnetic. People are drawn to it because it's so rare. We live in a culture obsessed with being right, so when someone shows vulnerability, it feels revolutionary. Think about it. When's the last time someone said, "You're right, I messed up," and you felt angry at them? You didn't. You respected them more, because honesty softens hearts faster than pride ever could. There's another quiet truth Carnegie uncovered. If you want to guide someone, don't command, invite. Ask questions instead of giving orders. Let them feel ownership over the solution. People resist control but respond to trust. They'll walk farther for a cause they feel part of than for a rule they're forced to follow. The best leaders don't push, they pull. They don't say, "Do this because I said so." They ask, "What do you think we could do here?" And in that moment, something powerful happens. People start thinking with you, not against you. That's leadership through empathy. It's how you move others without making them feel moved. In a noisy, competitive world, kindness feels almost radical. But kindness is not weakness, it's wisdom. Kindness is the courage to see others as human, flawed, insecure, just trying their best. And when you treat people with that understanding, they don't just listen, they open up. Everyone you meet is fighting for dignity in their own quiet way. And the moment you give it to them, without asking for anything in return, you've already influenced them more deeply than any argument ever could. That's the beauty of Carnegie's philosophy. It's not about tricks or social tactics. It's about returning humanity to human interaction. Because no one changes by being told what's wrong with them. People change when they feel safe enough to see themselves clearly. And to create that safety, that's influence in its purest form. We all want to be heard, respected, remembered. We all want to matter. And yet we forget that the fastest way to matter is to make others matter first. You want to be admired? Appreciate others. You want to be listened to? Learn to listen. You want to be understood? Seek to understand first. Every emotion you crave is one you can give. And the irony is, the more you give it, the more it comes back to you. Influence is not a skill you master. It's a way of being. It's a quiet confidence that doesn't need to dominate. It's the realization that in a world where everyone wants attention, the rarest thing you can offer is presence.
There's a reason why most conversations feel shallow. It's not because people have nothing to say, it's because nobody's really listening. In a world that rewards noise, silence has become a rare form of intelligence. People are desperate to be understood, yet too impatient to understand. We scroll, react, and interrupt, but we barely hear. That's why true listening feels sacred. It's not about waiting for your turn to talk. It's about emptying yourself for a moment, creating space for someone else's truth to exist. When you really listen, you stop being the center of the world. You become the witness. And that's where real influence begins. Carnegie understood this better than most. He noticed that people don't need brilliant advice. They need validation. They don't need solutions right away. They need to feel that someone finally gets them. You can spend hours trying to change someone's mind, or you can spend minutes making them feel heard. And you'll get further with the second one every single time. There's a hidden hunger inside every person, the hunger to feel important. And no, that's not vanity, it's human. Psychologist William James once said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." Think about that for a second. People will go to war, chase money, seek fame, all for the same emotional currency, to feel that they matter. And the moment you give that freely, without agenda, you create magic. Because appreciation is oxygen for the soul. But here's the challenge. You can't fake it. People can smell insincerity a mile away. So when you appreciate someone, it has to come from truth, not manipulation. Carnegie warned about flattery. It's empty sugar. What he taught instead was genuine appreciation. It's when you look at someone, notice the small things they do right, and tell them sincerely, "I see you. I value that." You don't need grand gestures. You don't need to exaggerate. You just need to be real. Because in a society addicted to criticism, Authenticity is the rarest compliment.
Most people underestimate how powerful small acts of kindness are. A smile, a thank you, a gentle tone instead of a harsh one. These seem trivial, but they're not. When you smile, you're saying, "I come in peace." You lower someone's defenses before a single word is spoken. Carnegie believed in the psychology of simplicity, that even a small gesture can shift an entire emotional climate. A smile can diffuse tension. A kind word can stop an argument before it begins. It's easy to dismiss these things as soft until you realize they're the foundation of every relationship that lasts. But let's be honest, it's hard to stay kind in a world that rewards cynicism. It's hard to stay gentle when everyone seems loud, selfish, and competitive. We live in an age where humility looks naive and empathy looks weak. And yet, those who stay kind often end up winning in the long run. Why? Because kindness builds trust, and trust is the only currency that never devalues. People forget charm. They forget clever words, but they never forget how you made them feel safe. Here's the quiet paradox. The more you focus on others, the more powerful you become. The more you try to serve, the more influence you gain. Most people chase admiration by talking about themselves, but admiration comes from doing the opposite, by turning the spotlight around. The best conversationalists aren't those who talk a lot, they're the ones who make others talk and feel heard. They ask questions that open doors. They make people feel interesting. And here's the twist. People will walk away thinking you're fascinating, when all you did was make them feel fascinating. That's human nature. That's how deep empathy works. But empathy isn't just emotional, it's strategic. Because when you truly understand people, you can inspire them more effectively. Carnegie said, "Talk in terms of the other person's interests. Don't sell what you want, speak to what they care about." It's not manipulation, it's translation. You're not changing your truth, you're changing the language so others can hear it. Every great leader, teacher, or partner knows this instinctively. They don't yell louder, they listen deeper. They don't try to be impressive, they try to be relatable. Influence isn't about being above people, it's about standing beside them and saying, "I see where you are. Let's walk together." But understanding others starts with understanding yourself. Because if you're constantly insecure, defensive, or seeking validation, you'll never have space to truly see anyone else. The ego loves to speak. It hates to listen. It wants to win, not connect. That's why self-awareness is the first step to genuine influence. You have to notice when your ego hijacks the conversation, when you're not really listening but just waiting to sound smart, when you're not curious but competitive. And the moment you catch yourself doing it, pause, breathe, return to curiosity. Because every person you meet knows something you don't. And every time you choose to listen instead of prove, you expand. Not just your mind, but your humanity. Carnegie wasn't teaching social tricks. He was teaching humility as a lifestyle. He believed that influence was just emotional maturity in action. And if you look closely, all his advice points back to one idea. Treat people as people, not problems. That's harder than it sounds. It means you have to let go of judgment. It means you have to see the insecure boss not as arrogant, but as scared. The rude customer not as cruel, but as overwhelmed. The cold friend not as distant, but as hurting. It's not about excusing bad behavior. It's about understanding what causes it. Because once you understand, you stop reacting and start responding.
That's the difference between emotional children and emotional adults. Children react instantly, impulsively. Adults respond with awareness, with choice. And the more you practice that, the more respect you earn without even trying. You see, respect isn't demanded, it's reflected. It comes naturally when people feel safe around your energy. When you no longer need to dominate a room, you start owning it quietly. When you no longer crave attention, you attract it without asking. And when you no longer seek power over people, you begin to have influence with them. That's the paradox of true influence. The more you let go of control, the more control you actually gain. Because people can feel your energy. They can tell if you're leading from fear or love, from ego or service. And they always respond to what's real, not what's rehearsed. So the next time you speak to someone, ask yourself, are you trying to prove your worth? Or are you trying to understand theirs? Because that small shift in intention changes everything.
Respect is a strange thing. Everyone wants it, but few truly understand what earns it. You can't demand it. You can't fake it. You can't buy it with titles, money, or status. Real respect is something people feel in your presence. It's the quiet energy that says, I don't need to prove I'm above you. I'm here with you. That's the kind of respect Dale Carnegie was teaching. Not fear-based respect, not the kind that makes people obey out of intimidation, but the kind that makes people want to listen. And the secret to earning that kind of respect is humility. Most people misunderstand humility. They think it means being soft or submissive. But humility isn't weakness, it's awareness. It's knowing your strength so well that you don't need to show it off. It's being grounded enough to say, I might be wrong. It's choosing understanding over ego. Carnegie once said, if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Why? Because honesty disarms people faster than any clever argument ever could. We live in a culture addicted to being right. Scrolling, posting, arguing, correcting. But being right doesn't always mean being wise. The world doesn't reward those who always win debates. It rewards those who build bridges. And when you have the courage to admit fault, to say, you're right, I didn't see it that way, you do something radical. You break the cycle of defensiveness. You replace competition with connection. That's the paradox of power. When you lower your guard, people put theirs down too. And that's when real change happens. Not through shouting, but through humility. You see, influence is emotional, not logical. People don't remember your facts, they remember your tone. They don't follow your arguments, they follow your energy. If you make them feel respected, they'll follow you anywhere. If you make them feel small, they'll resist you forever, even when you're right.
The truth is, most conflict isn't about ideas, it's about ego. People don't fight because the other person is wrong, they fight because they feel disrespected. Every argument has two layers, the surface layer of words and the deeper layer of emotion. And that deeper layer, that invisible field of pride and insecurity, is where the real battle happens. You can't win that with logic. You win it by giving people something more powerful than proof, dignity. Carnegie taught that the best way to win people to your side is to never say you're wrong, even when they are. Because the moment you attack someone's pride, their logic shuts down. They stop listening, not because they don't understand you, but because they feel unsafe. So instead of attacking, invite. Instead of "you're wrong," try "I might see it differently. Can I share how I understand it?" It sounds small, but it changes everything. Because now you're not fighting against someone, you're thinking with them. And that's leadership. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that guides through grace. Carnegie believed that leadership isn't about commanding people, it's about inspiring them to follow willingly. He said, "Ask questions instead of giving direct orders." When you ask instead of telling, you give people autonomy. You give them a sense of ownership, and ownership breeds loyalty. Think about it. When someone asks for your opinion, how do you feel? You feel trusted. You feel valued. That's why the best leaders don't say, "do this." They say, "what do you think?" And suddenly, the other person doesn't feel controlled, they feel included. But leadership isn't just about teams or workplaces. It's about every interaction. You lead every time you calm a heated moment. You lead every time you choose empathy over ego. You lead every time you take responsibility instead of assigning blame. Leadership begins in the smallest places, in conversations, in choices, in tone. And that's what makes it beautiful. Because you don't need authority to have influence. You just need awareness. Because at the end of the day, people don't follow your position, they follow your presence.
Presence is invisible, but everyone feels it. It's what happens when you walk into a room and others relax. Not because you're loud, but because your energy says you're safe here. It's rare, because most people walk into a room wanting to be noticed, not realizing that true power comes from noticing others. When you notice people, when you remember their name, when you recall what they told you last week, when you make them feel remembered, you do something most forget to do. You make them feel real. In a world obsessed with visibility, you give people the gift of being seen, and that's the quiet foundation of respect. Carnegie understood this deeper than most. He didn't just want people to get along, he wanted them to become more human with each other. He believed that human connection was an art, and like all art, it requires patience, observation, and sincerity. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. You have to live it. That's why his principles sound simple, but feel hard, because they're not techniques, they're transformations. To really apply them, you have to change the way you see people. You have to stop seeing conversations as transactions and start seeing them as opportunities to understand someone's world. You have to stop seeing mistakes as threats and start seeing them as chances to grow together. And you have to stop seeing humility as surrender and start seeing it as strength. But here's the truth. Most people never reach that level of emotional maturity because it takes courage to be kind when others are cruel. It takes strength to listen when others shout. It takes wisdom to walk away from a fight you could win just to protect peace. Yet the people who master that, the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who make others feel calm, they're the ones who change everything, because the world doesn't need more clever people. It needs more understanding people. It needs more listeners, more peacemakers, more humble leaders who know that empathy isn't weakness, it's the highest form of intelligence. Carnegie's wisdom still matters because the problem hasn't changed, only the noise has gotten louder. We now live in a world of arguments disguised as comments, performances disguised as opinions, and followers confused with friends. But the same truth remains. You can't connect with people if you're trying to prove you're better than them. If you want to influence someone, don't try to outshine them. Help them shine too. That's not just emotional intelligence, that's humanity. And in a century where we're more connected than ever, but feel lonelier than ever, that kind of humanity isn't optional, it's essential.
There's a kind of power that doesn't make noise. It doesn't need to announce itself, doesn't demand attention, doesn't shout to be heard. It's the power that comes from inner stillness, from knowing who you are, and treating others as though they matter just as much. That's the power Dale Carnegie was trying to give people. Not the power to dominate, but the power to connect. Not the power to win arguments, but the power to win hearts. And that kind of power never grows old. Most people think influence means bending others to your will, but real influence isn't about control, it's about alignment. It's when your presence, your words, and your actions line up so clearly that people feel safe following you, not because they have to, but because they want to. You see, people don't trust perfection. They trust authenticity. They don't need you to be flawless. They just need you to be real. When you show your humanity, your flaws, your lessons, your compassion, people relate to you. They see themselves in you. That's where the bridge is built. Carnegie used to tell his students, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Simple, right? But look at how many of us do exactly that. We approach people with criticism and then act surprised when they sting back. We complain about people being defensive without realizing we made them feel attacked. But when you approach people gently, when you make them feel safe, their walls come down on their own. That's emotional intelligence in action. It's not about being clever, it's about being considerate. And when you learn that, you realize something profound. The greatest strength you can show is restraint. Because power without empathy is domination. But power with empathy, that's transformation. It doesn't just change others, it changes you. You become calmer, more centered, more aware. You stop needing to win every interaction. You stop keeping score. You start finding peace and understanding, not victory in arguments. You start to realize that most people aren't evil, they're just hurt. And hurt people don't need punishment, they need patience. That shift from judgment to curiosity, that's the start of wisdom. Carnegie didn't invent kindness. He just reminded the world how powerful it is. He believed that emotional maturity wasn't about suppressing your feelings, but about guiding them with intelligence. When you stay kind in chaos, you don't lose, you lead. When you stay patient while others panic, you become the calm in their storm. And when you choose to make others feel important, you don't lower yourself, you elevate humanity.
Look around, the modern world rewards volume. The loudest people get the attention. The flashiest ones get the followers. But the most respected ones, they're rarely the loudest. They're the ones who listen more than they speak, who make people feel seen instead of small, who walk into rooms and bring peace, not pressure. That's the kind of person you remember long after they're gone. Because deep down, everyone is starving for peace, not noise, for connection, not competition. And when you become that rare kind of person who offers both, you become unforgettable. Here's something Carnegie would have loved. Neuroscientists today confirm that the human brain is wired for connection. When we feel understood, our nervous system relaxes. When we feel appreciated, our brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical. So kindness doesn't just make people like you, it literally changes their biology. You calm their mind, you regulate their stress, you make the world, in that small moment, a safer place. That's not philosophy, that's science. Source, Harvard Health Publishing, The Science of Kindness. And that's why Carnegie's ideas never die. Because they're not just moral, they're biological truths. Humans don't thrive in competition, they thrive in connection. So what does this mean for you? It means the smallest gestures matter. Your tone matters. Your timing matters. The look in your eyes matters. People won't always remember what you said, they won't always remember what you did, but they'll always remember how they felt around you. And that's the legacy you leave behind. Not words, not wealth, but warmth. One day, when you've long stopped trying to impress people, you'll notice something strange. You'll start attracting people who respect you deeply. Not because you tried to win them, but because you made them feel understood.
you'll realize that listening can be louder than speaking, that gentleness can outlast force, that empathy can move hearts faster than logic ever could. And that's when you'll understand what Carnegie meant all along. Winning people isn't about technique. It's about character. The more human you become, the more powerful you become. So maybe the goal isn't to be the smartest person in the room, but the kindest. Not the most dominant, but the most composed. Not the one who knows everything, but the one who makes everyone feel like they matter. That's not soft. That's mastery. Because the world will always have noise, but very few will have presence. And if you can be that rare person, that calm voice in a world addicted to chaos, you'll find something most never will: peace. And through that peace, you'll gain the quiet kind of power, the kind that changes people without ever having to control them.